Hi friends, we hope you have been having fun learning Azure from the experts today. Do you want to have complete control over what gets deployed on your Kubernetes cluster? Do you have existing deployment certification processes that you want to extend to Kubernetes? By creating custom admission webhooks for Kubernetes, we can define strict regulations to deploy only the approved workloads on our cluster. My name is Rahul and I love Azure. I work as an engineering manager at a popular Australian fintech, Zip. I prepared this session in collaboration with my friend Tarun, who is a lead engineer at a major Australian media company, Nine. I love putting cloud services through their paces, and you can stay in the loop by subscribing to my blog, thecloudblog.net. Tarun and I also welcome your feedback on this session through our Twitter handles below. The resources and a write up on this demo is available on my blog. The bit.ly link below will take you there. In this short video, we'll discuss how you can perform a static assessment of the workloads on your Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS cluster using Azure Policy. Next, we will discuss how you can also use Azure Functions to make the workload admission process dynamic. To keep you excited, I'm going to drop a hint of what is to come. We will make my Kubernetes cluster send me messages on my phone when developers try to break the policies that I have enforced. Guess what? We are going to use Azure Communication Service for it. Are you keen to see how it unfolds? Let's go. Kubernetes allows decoupling policy decisions to accept or reject a new deployment from the API server using admission controller webhooks. These webhooks can intercept admission requests before they are persisted as objects in Kubernetes. Using admission controllers, you can enforce custom policies such as all images must originate from approved repositories. All ingress hostnames must be globally unique. All pods must specify resource limits. All namespaces must have a label that lists a point of contact. Admission controller webhooks are of two types. The first one is mutating admission webhook, which intercepts admission requests that match the rules defined in mutating webhook configuration. The matching webhooks are invoked in sequence, and each one may modify the object if it desires. If you have used any popular service mesh, such as Istio, this is the component that adds sidecar to your pods. Let's now discuss validating admission webhooks, which are what we are going to focus on today. After the mutation phase of admission, requests go to the validation phase. The Kubernetes API server selects all the matching validating admission webhooks and invokes them in parallel. If any webhook rejects the request fails. Let's discuss the static admission controllers first. On AKS, static admission control is enforced through the Azure Policy Service. Azure Policy is an evolution of the Gatekeeper project. So let's discuss it first. Gatekeeper is a customizable admission webhook for Kubernetes that enforces policies that are executed by the Open Policy Agent or OPA. OPA is a policy engine that facilitates policy-based control for cloud-native environments, and it is an open source project hosted by CNCF. Once all the Gatekeeper components have been installed in your cluster, the API server will trigger the Gatekeeper admission webhook to accept or deny the admission request whenever a resource in the cluster is created, updated, or deleted. For resources that already exist on the cluster prior to installing Gatekeeper, Gatekeeper supports the audit feature. Auditing enables periodic evaluations of resources against the constraints enforced in the cluster to detect misconfigurations. Gatekeeper stores audit results as violations listed in the status field of the relevant constraint. This allows administrators to detect the resources violating any given policy. Azure Policy extends Gatekeeper to apply at-scale enforcements and safeguards on your cluster in a centralized, consistent manner. With the Azure Policy add-on in the cluster, you can manage and report on the compliance state of your Kubernetes cluster from one place. Once you install the Azure Policy add-on, it processes the following functions. It first queries Azure Policy Service for the policies assigned to the cluster. Next, it deploys policy definitions as constraint template and constraint custom resources. Finally, it reports the audit and compliance details to the Azure Policy Service, which you can later inspect on the Azure portal. Enough talk. Let's see how you can apply Azure Policy to deny creating pods that don't specify the application owner label. Static admission control, on Azure Kubernetes Service is managed through Azure Policy Service. In order to enable Azure Policy on your AKS cluster, navigate to the policies section in your of your Kubernetes cluster and click on the enable add-on button. Now, enabling Azure Policy on AKS takes some time. So I will pause the video in order to reduce the wait time. Once the policy add-on has been enabled, we are now ready to assign policies to our AKS cluster. In order to do that, go to the search box and search for the policy service. In the policy service, click on the definitions. You would find that there are a bunch of inbuilt definitions that you can use. We are interested in a particular definition that allows us to enforce the condition that all pods must have an owner's label. So let's filter the list down by searching for Kubernetes and further by searching for label. By putting in these two constraints, you would be able to reach the policy that we want to apply. Next, let's click on the assign button, and using the options, assign it to a Kubernetes cluster. So the policy is applied on a certain resource group. So choose the resource group in which our cluster lives. Let's rename this policy to a meaningful name. You can see that you can enable or disable a policy enforcement. In the next section, let's define the name of the label that the pods must contain. Since the name of labels is an array, you need to define it as such. The default effect is deny, but you can also disable it or just mark this policy for audit. There are certain namespaces that are excluded from the policy. You can add more if you want. If you want uh, some corrective measures to be taken when this policy denies creation of a resource, you can do that here. Since we don't want to affect any of those features, let's just review and click on create. When you go back to the policy section, you would find that a new policy has come into effect, but again, it will take some time to be enabled. So I will pause the video. In the overview section of the Azure Policy dashboard, you can now see that our policy is ready. What it essentially means is that we should not be able to now create a pod unless we specify the owner's label within the pod. So let's test that. So let's head over to the terminal, and I will paste a specification that asks Kubernetes to provision a namespace and a job, essentially a pod within that namespace. But notice that we haven't specified the owner label here. The only label present here specifies the name of the app. When you execute this policy, you would see that it did create two resources, but did it actually create a pod? So in order to check, I will try to fetch all the pods within the namespace. You would find that there are no pods created under the namespace, even though we instructed it to. I wonder what happened there. So let's try to find out the status of the job. So when you submit the command, you would find in the event section that the admission webhook that we created denied creation of the pod because we didn't specify the owner label. Since uh, a label is a immutable property, we need to clear the namespace and hence delete the pod before we can create it again. Let's now try to fix the issue by creating another pod, but this time we will specify the owner label. In the specification now you can see that we have uh, the pod spec defined again, but this time we also specify the owner label. When we hit enter this time, both of the resources got created. Let's again check whether the pod exists in the namespace. So this time you can see that the pod is now ready and running, which means that the admission webhook didn't deny its creation. If you try to run the describe command, you would find that the pod was successfully created. Let's take a few minutes to understand how the requests that you make through the kubectl CLI travel through the Kubernetes API server. Every request to the Kubernetes is first authenticated and authorized. There are several types of authorization modules available in Kubernetes, such as the attribute-based access control that allows authorization rules to be configured via local files, and role-based access control, which allows authorization rules to be configured via the Kubernetes API, etc. An authorized request then moves on to a special class of admission controllers called the mutating admission controllers. A mutating admission controller can modify the object that they admit. If you have used Service Mesh, then mutating admission controllers are what inject a sidecar to your application workloads. The application controllers are of two types, standard and dynamic. Standard admission controllers are packaged with Kubernetes release as plugins. Dynamic admission controllers, on the other hand, are configurable at runtime and are developed outside the core Kubernetes codebase. The only type of dynamic admission control is admission webhooks, which receive admission requests via HTTP callbacks. Here you can see how the admission controller sends an admission review HTTP request to the dynamic admission webhook and receives an admission response HTTP response from it. After mutation, if any, the request moves on to the schema validation controller that checks whether the request conforms to the Kubernetes API specs. Next, the request progresses along to the validation admission stage, which, just like mutating admission controller, relies on webhooks to dynamically validate the request. You can see that the validation admission controller issues a similar request and expects a similar response from the webhook. Since we will soon build a dynamic validation webhook ourselves, we will not discuss it in detail right now. Once the request has moved across the controllers in the API server, it is saved in the etcd key value store. etcd has several listeners attached to it that get notified on changes. These listeners use the state information present in etcd to modify the actual state of the cluster. We will now walk through the steps of operationalizing a custom validation webhook. You will first need to have access to a running Kubernetes cluster on the cloud, such as GKE for Google, AKS for Azure, or EKS for AWS, or you can use the local cluster setup, such as Docker Desktop, Minikube, or Kind. I'm going to use AKS for this demo. After you have provisioned your cluster, let's design and build a validation admission webhook. We are going to implement our validating admission webhook with .NET Core and deploy it to Azure Functions. Do you remember that a dynamic admission controller sends an admission review request and expects an admission review response from the webhook? The specification on the right is the schema of the request that the configured webhook would receive. On the left is the response that the webhook needs to return to the controller. The request specifies the operation that you're trying to perform, such as creating a resource or updating a resource. And it also contains the Kubernetes specification file that you're trying to apply as well. Whether the request is approved or denied depends on the value of the property allowed in the response. If the value of the property is set to true, the request is approved, else it is rejected. Let's discuss the overall design of our system. A developer writes the specification for a deployment that they want to apply to the Kubernetes cluster. A custom dynamic validating admission controller will receive the request and it will send it to a reverse proxy service running as a service inside our cluster. The reverse proxy service transparently forwards the request to our Azure function for approval. Due to restriction enforced by the Kubernetes API server, the function has a maximum of 30 seconds to decide on whether the request should be approved or denied. In either case, the response is returned to the API server and ultimately to the developer. During the processing of the request, Azure Function also uses the newly launched Azure Communication Service to communicate the response to a phone belonging to operations or SRE via a text message. You might be wondering why we require a reverse proxy service to forward requests to the function. The admission controllers are part of the Kubernetes API server and hence are managed by Azure. The firewall policies in Azure do not allow the API server to access any external HTTP endpoints. However, the API server can communicate with services within the cluster. And so, we require a service executing in the cluster to forward the request to an external service. It is not a bad thing, as you can add security headers such as auth token to your request so that you can configure your function to only process authorized requests. If you have already downloaded the source code from the link shown in the footer of this slide, then open the repo in your editor. Next, I will guide you through the structure of the repo and deploy the function app to Azure. Let us go through the structure of the Validating Webhook Azure Function project and understand it in detail. The project consists of a single HTTP triggered function called Admission Control FX. Let's inspect the function in detail. If you go through the source code of the function, you would find that it first defines a number of SMS templates. Next comes the signature of the function. You can see that it is an HTTP triggered function with its authorization level set to anonymous. Because of it, the client won't need to pass in an API key in order to reach this function. However, for production use, it is recommended that you mandate that the clients pass in an API key. Let's look at the body of the function. The function first converts the body to a string, and then it tries to convert the string object to a dynamic object. It then next tries to find out whether a create or an update operation for the application is requested. Next, it tries to find out the name of the application from the request. A custom business logic that I have implemented is to not allow those applications to get provision, that is created or updated, if the number of pods requested for the application is less than 3. So this statement tries to extract the number of pods requested for the application. And if the replica count is less than 3, not only do I send an SMS to the SRE team, I also send a response back to the API server with the value of the property allowed set to false. And because of the value of the property set to false, Kubernetes API server won't allow this request to be processed. If the replica count condition is satisfied, then I try to extract the container image names from the request. It then converts those names to a CSV value. Now, if the operation requested is creation of an application, it prepares an appropriate SMS. Otherwise, it tries to find out the existing container image names and again converts those names to a CSV. It prepares an appropriate SMS message again, notifying that, denoting that the operation requested is to update an existing application. In both the cases, that is, whether the operation requested was create or update, it sends an SMS to the SRE team. And it also responds with an OK response to the API server. But this time it sets the property of the allowed property to true, which means that Kubernetes API server would allow this request to be processed. We have used the send SMS function quite a few times now. Let's look at how the body of the send SMS function. If you remember that we are using the Azure Communication Service in order to send SMS to SRE teams. Using the SDK, sending out SMS is pretty easy. All you need to do is to have a phone number, a connection string, and another phone number that is provisioned by ACS. Using these three settings, you can first create an SMS client object. Next, simply send out an SMS using the two phone numbers and the SMS body. Now let's use the VS Code Azure extension to deploy this function to Azure. I have already created a function app using the Azure Management Portal. And now I can see the application in the functions dropdown section. So let's go to the extension. And here you would be able to see the function. Let's right click it and select the deploy to function app option. It will launch a confirmation dialog. Just need to click on deploy. So while the deployment is ongoing, I will talk to you about another aspect. My function contains some secrets, and these secrets are stored in the local.settings.json file. This file is not pushed to the Git repository. In order to deploy this file, I can go back to the Azure extension and right-click on the application settings section. And from here, I can click on upload local settings. Now let's go to the Azure portal and see whether the function and its associated settings have been deployed. On the Azure portal, if you navigate to the functions section, you would be able to see our function, which is an HTTP triggered function. It's already running. And if you go to the configuration section, you would also see all the settings that we uploaded are available here. So while we are on the Azure portal, let me also give you a glimpse of the Azure Communication Service. This service is still in preview, and it helps you build applications that require calling and SMS as features. So in order to work with this service, you need to acquire a phone number. Currently, this service is only operational in the US region. But from the phone number section, you can acquire a toll-free number or a local number through which you can send SMS or make calls. The configuration settings that we saw in the function app, you can get the keys and the connection strings for the communication service from the keys section. Now that our function app is up and running, it's time to configure the Kubernetes cluster to use it. We will define a validating webhook configuration and submit it to the Kubernetes API. The configuration specifies the URL that the validating admission controller should send the request to and specifies the conditions on which the webhook should be invoked. The sample specification that you see on the screen specifies the URL of the webhook, which can be that of a service on the web or, as in our case, the service within our cluster. All webhooks are required to use an HTTPS endpoint. The CA bundle property contains the base64 encoding of a PEM formatted root certificate used by the webhook. This certificate is used by the API server to verify that the response was returned from an authorized server. Let's now look at the rules which specify the conditions on which the webhook will be triggered. The specified rule conditions evaluate to true if we issue a request to create or update a deployment. The scope property value namespace means that any deployments in the default namespace won't trigger this webhook. The other properties specify the timeout period in seconds for which the API server will wait for response from our function. The default policy is to fail the request in case the function times out or returns error. The side effects property set to none means that calling this webhook will not cause any changes to any resource in the cluster. Finally, the property admission review version specifies the version of admission review request that it can process, which can either be v1 request or v1 beta 1 request, and which is the same as the version of this configuration and one older compatible version of the same configuration. Let's briefly take a look at the source code of the reverse proxy application. The role of the reverse proxy is only to accept requests from the Kubernetes API server and forward the request to the Azure function that we deployed earlier. The reverse proxy has just one file to be looked into, which is the main.go file. Let's take a brief look at the source code and understand its structure. So as you can see that there is, in the main method, we initialize a web server. This web server has just one endpoint that it listens to, which is the default endpoint. Whenever requests are sent to the default endpoint, they are transparently forwarded to the Azure function that we deployed earlier. Note that since the web server listens only to HTTPS traffic, it requires TLS certificates, and those TLS certificates are picked from a location. So we'll take a look at how we generate and mount certificates to this location where it expects to read them from. Our reverse proxy is expecting to fetch some certificates from a given location as specified in the application. In order to generate the certificates and mount them so that they are available to our application, we wrote a helper script, generate certificate.sh, which is a shell script. Let's see what's going on here. So the first couple of statements generate relevant TLS certificates. And in the last part, what we do is we create a secret named DACRP cert, which takes the certificates that are generated from the previous commands and mount them as a secret. This secret is later mounted to the application in the form of a volume. We'll go through that specification next. So now it's time to tie all the components together. By that, I mean that we are going to deploy the reverse proxy to our cluster, and we are also going to configure the validating webhook configuration such that Kubernetes API server talks to the reverse proxy whenever a new deployment request comes through, and the reverse proxy forwards the request onto Azure function to make the final decision. Now, in order to do that, we are going to deploy a Kubernetes specification. The specification is named DACRC spec, which you can find in the specifications folder. Let's go through the specification together. Let me switch to the presentation mode. The first two specifications deploy the reverse proxy to our cluster. After these first two parts of the specification are applied, the reverse proxy would be available as a service that the Kubernetes API server can talk to. The most interesting part in this are the secrets and how we mount them as volumes. So remember that with the previous script, we generated a secret named DAC-RP cert. The same secret is mounted at the path that is expected by the application. And this secret contains the base64 encoded certificates. So this is how we make the certificates available to the application. Now comes the most critical part of this specification. This specification deploys our validating webhook to Kubernetes. In a nutshell, what this webhook configuration does is that it exposes our service um, as a validating webhook configuration, which is the reverse proxy application is exposed as a service, is what I mean to say, at a certain path. And the CA bundle property specifies the certificate that we generated using the script earlier. This policy will only affect the request to create or update a deployment within a namespace. Let's now apply this specification to our cluster. So in order to do that, all we need to do is write the kubectl apply command and specify the name of the file. You can see that now the service deployment and the webhook configuration have been created. So now our cluster is ready to either accept or reject the deployments based on the conditions that we have configured in the Azure function. So now let's use a sample specification in order to test whatever we have deployed till now. In order to test our validating webhook, what I've done is I've created a very simple application. Let's look at the spec for the application. The first part of the spec only creates a namespace, and then we create a very simple deployment using the very popular Alpine image. Remember that one of the business logic that we have configured in the Azure function is to decline a deployment if the replica count is less than 3. So if I specify the replica count of the deployment to 2, then the deployment shouldn't go through. Now remember that Azure Communication Service is only available in the US. And since I live in Australia, I don't have a US number. So what I did was I purchased a US phone number on Skype, so on which I can also receive messages. So what I'm going to do is try to apply this specification and see what happens. So what I'm going to do is kubectl apply -f alpine spec, which is the name of this specification. And you can see that our admission webhook returned an error uh, with the proper error message saying that the replica count should be greater than 2. I received an SMS on my Skype number as well. So let's take a look at that. So you can see uh, the SMS that Azure Communication Service sent to us saying that uh, stating that the number of replica count doesn't match what we have put in the business logic. So let's change that and change it to 3. And this time the deployment should go through. So let's run the same command again. And this time you can see that the deployment was created. I received an SMS as well. So this time you can see that the admission bot says that a new application was created. And since it is a rich SMS, you can also see the name of the application that was created. Let's now try the third and final scenario, which is to update the application. In order to update the application, what I'm going to do is simply change the name of the image. So from 3.9.1 to 3. I'm going to run the same command again. And this time you can see that the deployment was successfully updated. I received another message. Let's see what that SMS is. So if I expand this a little bit, you can see that the third SMS says that the update was approved by the Azure function that we created. And not only does it state that the update operation was successfully completed. Being a rich message, it also tells you the previous version of the image and the new image that was applied in order to carry out the update. So these are all the scenarios that we had implemented in the Azure function. And this also concludes my demo. Finally, here are the links to the slides and the concepts that we discussed today. This brings me to the end of the presentation. I hope you had fun learning about controlling admission to your Kubernetes cluster with Azure Functions. Tarun and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you through our Twitter handles at RaulRai_N and TarunPuppy7 or on my blog, thecloudblog.net. Thank you.